It's my great pleasure to introduce to you Benjamin Negrete Jr. He is an NSF graduate research fellow at the University of Texas at Austin's Marine Science Institute. Prior to his current position, he earned a Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology and a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from the University of Rhode Island and worked as a special educator in California for 5 years. You can find out more about Ben on his website or the 500 Queer Scientists database. Ben, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for the intro and thanks for having me.
So we just graphed and interpreted some data from your research. Could you tell me about the research that these data came from?
Yeah, I'd love to. So these data that you all just looked at come from my work on essentially how fish breathe, how they can take up oxygen from the water and deliver it to their aerobic tissues. So specifically, my work is looking at how fish can modify this whole oxygen system and pathway that we all have as vertebrates and become better at taking up oxygen and using it. So the data that you all graphed today is specifically from a part of my project where I could take the tiniest sample of blood from these fish and see how they could saturate with oxygen at different levels and conditions, and overall how that contributed to the animal as a whole.
Great, so cool, thank you. My next question for you is, what kinds of scientific questions interest you the most?
So I'm really interested in adaptations, these kinds of techniques and secrets that organisms can have that manifest in different environmental conditions. Organisms and fish specifically have this remarkable ability to adapt and make really small adjustments that can lead to these larger benefits for the whole animal and unlocking this potential that we didn't even know they had. And I just really like finding out that mystery and seeing how that translates or applies to other parts of the fish's biology and life.
Yeah, it's really important to us understand, especially with global change. So what is a typical day like for you, Ben?
Well, every day is different, but most of the time my days start with saying hi to everyone that I work with. That includes the fish. I say that because I'm lucky to work at a small institute rather than a big university. So while I am part of the University of Texas, I am at their remote campus in the Marine Science Institute, and we're on this tiny island of about 2,000 people. So my institute kind of operates like a family. We all really know each other and we support each other. And so having that kind of environment has been really helpful and crucial during this tumultuous time of graduate school. Sometimes I like to also, because we get to work on the ocean, when we need a break, it's really nice to go walk along the channel and walk along the ocean. And we have dolphins and turtles that come up. So it's a nice reminder in our day of what we're doing and why we do it. I always like to start to take care of the fish, especially if we have experimental conditions, because I work with hypoxia, so making sure the oxygen levels are correct and that everything is ideal for the fish outside of what I'm doing to them. And then, of course, the best part of the day is getting to feed the fish and just to hang out with the animals, because that's why I got into science, why I got into marine biology.
It's great. I love that your institute operates like a family and that you have found a home there. Speaking of which, can we go back to your roots? Where did you grow up and what was it like growing up there?
So I'm at the University of Texas, and I actually grew up in North Texas, but I didn't come back to Texas for my university. It just happened to be here. But I grew up several hundred miles away from the ocean, about 500 miles away in North Texas. The area in which I grew up was pretty classic Texas, and my high school was about 4,000 students. The area where I grew up was really focused on football and the arts. So that's what I did, not the football, but the arts part. I was in theater, band, and choir all up and through high school. And I was really thankful for those opportunities and memories and the friendships that I made, because they were a really great outlet for me. I always really felt out of place in Texas and felt out of place in general. So those were really good spots for, any kind of student that feels out of place to find a home.
Yeah, I'm so glad you were able to find connections within the performing arts community despite feeling out of place. So then, here's a big question, Ben. You were an arts kid. So when and how did you know you wanted to be a scientist?
So I remember being in elementary school and kind of dreaming and drawing thoughts of being a marine biologist, or even thinking and drawing up thoughts of an aquarium one day. And I used to have this idea that I'd have an aquarium that would function as a cafe or even double as a theater to bring in that arts background. Because at the time and all up until high school, that's kind of what I thought science was. I thought that that was the only way that I could pursue science, which was great. I mean, I would be happy to have an aquarium and hang out with my fish all day. So I didn't even really know the breadth or the range of science until I went to college and really studied science. So after that, my idea of what it meant to be a scientist really expanded, and continued to expand even after I graduated college. I didn't know I wanted to be a research scientist specifically, um, or I didn't even know how being a research scientist worked. Like I didn't know that that was a field, and how it was different from being, say, an aquarist or anything. Uh, and so as I was learning more about science in college and thinking about it after I graduated, I realized even though I didn't know how to be a research scientist, that that's the area that I wanted to go into, because I really liked the curiosity. I really like asking questions and finding ways on how we can answer that question, and then getting to tell other people about that. So through kind of when I think about it that way, that I realized that research scientist was the niche that I wanted to find myself into.
That's great. It can take time to figure things out, but you found your path. So that's super awesome. So Ben, you identify as a first generation college graduate. So what is it like being a first generation scientist?
Well, I won't lie, it has been an uphill battle for sure. And it's one that I have learned a whole lot from. So my parents didn't go to college. So every step that I take, or every kind of progress that I make in my career, isn't just for me, it's for us, my whole family. Like I'm treading this path for my family. So sometimes it can feel like a lot of pressure and really kind of stressful. But and at the other flip of the coin, I have this incredibly supportive family who is looking and supportive every step of the way. Um, it's been kind of new to navigate new systems that I have absolutely no background or leadership in. It's almost like learning a new language. I had to learn new systems, new etiquette that I didn't even know existed until I was doing it. But on the other hand, I have learned to ask questions. Having this supportive network, I've learned to really rely on the people around me, or not rely, but ask for help when I need it, and to look to other people and realize that I'm not doing this alone. Every day feels like new territory, but it inspires me to help other students, help other people who want to go through this, whether it's high school or undergraduate, because I don't want anyone to be scared away or overwhelmed like I was. I want to show that college and science are accessible, and that there's a place for everyone, and it doesn't have to be this hard, and it's much easier than we think it is.
Thank you. Your persistence is so inspiring, and I appreciate your wanting to help others realize that first generation college students can be scientists too. So finally, could you tell me about a moment when you felt like you really belonged in the field of science?
Yeah, so this is something that I'm always processing, and an ongoing identity that I'm working on. And belonging, I think, comes in two ways. There's the external ways that we feel belonging, like that kind of validation we get from other people. And then there's the eternal way. So I'll give you two answers here. Uh, One of the external ways that I felt like I belonged was the first time I got a scholarship as an undergraduate, and it was new territory, writing something about myself, writing about what I wanted to do in science, when like as I said before, I didn't really know much about it. And then when I was awarded it, I thought, wow, someone thinks that I can do this. Someone out there read something that I wrote and believes in me, and is looking at what I'm doing and saying that I have something to say and to contribute. And that kind of support and respect really inspired me and validated me to keep going. But that's not the only way that we should find a way of belonging, right? Like we have to believe it ourselves. And one of the things that helped me, at least internally, is going through this whole process, and whether it was in a class or my own research, but getting my first data set and looking at numbers that I created and looking at results that I found, and having this sense of pride of like, oh, I did that. And it like I can tell a story with that. And it so that really felt like I'm a scientist, like I did something. Uh, and that moment didn't just come through research, it came through class, because in lab you do experiments and results. So it's those kinds of moments that help me feel like I belong.
I hear that. There's nothing like that feeling of accomplishment when you graph your own data. And for sure, the feeling of being welcomed, supported, respected for who you are, that's super important too. So Ben, thank you for sharing your research with us, how you became the scientist you are, and your commitment to helping others like you find their paths to being scientists too.
Thank you again for having me. Appreciate you and appreciate this opportunity.
Great, take good care.
Thanks, you too.